What's up, everybody? Welcome back to CFP Talks. We are here with, obviously, my bald brother, Mr. Raman Singh, and our two guests, Jack and Nick. And we are going to pick up right where we left off in part one of Jack and Nick telling us a little bit about their journey and some of the things that they used to pass the CFP in the March 2025 cycle. So, gents, let's pick up where we left off. So, where we left off our part one, you guys were telling us a little bit about, you know, the repetition of the process. And Jack, you said something that was really that I really love and something that obviously I say in class quite a bit, which is, if I really want to dig into a topic, the kind of idea that everybody has going in is I'm going to spend 5 hours on this today. I'm going to do this now and I'm going to get it and I'm not getting up from my seat until I know everything about estate planning. And then it doesn't work out that way. So, knowing that maybe you guys made some of those, did some of those things, going back through your process, what would you guys do differently? What would you do earlier? Maybe what are some things that you would avoid that you would advise, hey, if I was starting the CFP process all over again, starting today with what I know now, maybe some of the things that I would just even avoid completely. So Jack, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's something you definitely hammered into us early in class was just don't just consistently keep doing practice problems if you're not growing, if you're not going back and looking at things. And that's definitely how my process started. It felt like it was just the easy thing to do. I was like, well, I don't know what I don't know, so why don't I take this practice exam and figure out what I don't know? Um, I would use my books, your resources, especially your video library. And I used Dalton's study package and their video library as probably my biggest resource because that's how I was as a learner.
Hmm.
Videos just helped me the most. So I would say just doing a lot more of those and flashcards as opposed to just doing thousands of practice questions.
Jack, you know how to make me smile, man.
I try my hardest. I try
You
my
know how to make
hardest.
me smile. Saying things like repetition and flash. You sound like a teacher now. We may have to hire you soon.
I was gonna say, hey, okay, are we looking to expand? Are we looking to expand?
Maybe, maybe.
That's it. There's some tutoring Chicago, baby. There it is. How about you, Nick?
I would say to start with a sense of urgency. Um, I think going into this process, you kind of don't know what to expect, but if you go in with a sense of urgency or maybe build, factor in some time, if you know you're someone that maybe a little bit of a procrastinator or takes, a little bit for you to get going,
Hmm.
build that into your study plan. Um, but I would say the same thing as Jack. I think the I would have emphasized flashcards earlier on, had I known just how much material there was and how specific things can get. Because, like Jack said, you can do thousands of practice problems, and if you don't have an understanding of what you're missing, um, it'll never, you'll never get around to really solving the problem and get what they're asking.
Hmm.
So I think that really, for me, that was something that helped me.
Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic. I like what you guys said about the repetition and understanding that you have to do things differently, especially you, Nick, since retakers, what we notice a lot about retakers are, they focus so much on repetition of taking practice questions, right? Still repetitions, right? But the different type of repetitions where, what we hammer in with our students is like, hey, you gotta know your stuff. You have to understand the way Joe and I talk about it is first you gotta understand what you're reading, then you have to memorize what you're reading, and then you have to be able to apply what you just read, basically, right? These three things. And then if you repeat this process, hence repetition, then practice questions is kind of like the fun part at that point. You apply what you have just, repeated in your mind, so absolutely. Um, Guys, so what we would love to hear from you is let's talk about the taking the exam. Now, as we said earlier, we don't want to talk about the specifics of the exam itself. We don't care about that. But what we want to know is the mindset, right? Like you're taking the test and the anxiety and how are you dealing with that? I mean, this is a beast of an exam, right? Like 6 hours. And it's a marathon basically, right? So tell us about like what was going in your mind. How did you happen to deal with the anxiety? How did you happen to strategically tackle your questions? So we'll ask Jack again.
Yeah, I probably didn't deal with it the best. The morning of the exam, I was up at 4 a.m. and I just couldn't fall back asleep. Um,
Oh, the
so
best.
yeah, yeah. Going in, I was extremely nervous, but it was kind of like a confident nervous. I was like, I feel that I have the skills to do it. I just need to make sure I stick to my game. And I remember when you're going into an exam, for me, I always start second guessing everything. Like the first 7 to 10 questions, I flagged every single one. And then once I got to question 15, I was like, okay, I'm in a groove. I've taken practice questions before. Let's go back and answer these questions that I flagged. And I remember specifically during the break, because you have that, what is it, 45-minute break in the middle. I was like 15 minutes in, I was just like, I don't feel that just sitting here doing nothing is going to help me at all. I just want to go back in and just finish. So that's kind of what I did.
And Nick, what about you? How was your experience?
Yeah, so having taken this exam multiple times and you know, after having done, practice exams and simulating, I really tried to give myself an experience that would simulate exam day, like Joe, recommended to us. I would go to a library for practice exams and make it feel like I was going to a testing center and actually taking this exam. And so um, I was comfortable leading up to the exam. Same situation as Zach, as Jack. I went down to my best friend's house. I took it, around about an hour and a half away in Fort Myers, and I didn't get any sleep the night before. My best friend's daughter was, up crying the whole night, and I was kind of freaking out, and I'm like, uh, you know, I'm a little worried.
Hmm.
Um, but as I got to the exam, I was like, I've done this so many times before. I've put in so much work, but I was determined to use every single second that the time would allow. And I made sure I ate, you know, something that wouldn't upset my stomach. Like I did everything, didn't drink too much water. Like I didn't use any of my break time. I was very strategic about it. And I said, like, if I'm at my best, like I will pass this exam. And the first section of the exam, first like quarter, like Jack, I flagged so many questions, and I said to
Hmm.
myself, if the exam is going to be like this, it's going to be a long day. But it got better, and I said to myself, like, you can do this. I had to talk to myself a little bit, but I yeah, at the end, when I hit submit, I was very confident that it would go my way. And if it didn't, I knew that I did everything I could. I did everything that Joe told me to. I left no stone unturned. I was talking to my work colleague probably like a week and a half out, and I told him, I said, I feel like I don't have enough time in the day. Like I feel like I'm not doing enough. And he told me, he's like, that is how you know that you are ready to pass this exam.
Mm.
And that feeling is I can attest to, like, that was really what puts you over the mark.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Jack, can I go back to something you said, which was like you walk into the exam, and I think this goes for any of us, myself included, is we obviously simulate the exam and we can get pretty close to what it feels like, but there's just something about putting on those headphones at a prometric center that just feels different, right? You start kind of going in, and you start seeing the questions, and even if you've seen questions similar to them in practice, kind of start going, uh-oh, did I forget this? Oh my God. Like I didn't study enough. How did you guys get over that? Because, again, the first quarter is the most jarring quarter, in my opinion, of any exam. It's kind of like, holy crap, exam day is here. Like this is it. How did you guys kind of work through that? Did you guys kind of just take a breath and let the rest follow? Like, how did you start getting over the self-doubt and the second guessing? How did you guys work through that part of the exam?
I would I would probably just say just focusing. It sounds strange, like focusing solely on the questions, like not focusing on what I was feeling
Hmm.
or what I was thinking in the back of my mind. Just sitting down and dedicating myself, just being like, I've taken 5,000 of these questions. I've seen a variation of this before.
Hmm.
Um, so I think probably question 20 or so rolled around. I was like, all right, I can revisit those first 10. I'm a little more calm now. I just let's do it. Let's get this done.
Nick?
Yeah, so I think, like the mindset I talked about of not getting too high or too low during the studying process, I think it definitely applies to the exam too. Because Joe would tell us so many times, like, you know, if there's something so specific, like you got to keep it moving because you need to try to at least answer every question,
Yep.
right? Um, and I really tried to emphasize that during the exam of, the first quarter was difficult, and I said, better questions are coming. Not easier, but better questions are coming where maybe I don't know it right now, but I know the pace I need to keep and I need to keep it moving because I would hate to not, answer a question that I knew.
Hmm.
Um, and I think having that in the back of your mind is so important that, hey, you might get popped in the mouth, right now with a set of 10 questions that are really difficult, but you better be able to have the time to hit those questions that and that you've practiced so many times. Because you can't let that, you know, force you from not passing this exam.
I always love asking this question, but you're going to hit the submit button, and then what's going through your head? Scariest
Um,
moment of your life?
yeah, pretty much. I was what I was thinking was if I have to do this process over again, especially in the summer, Nick's down in Florida. He's got, sunshine for 12 months of the year. That's if I have to do this May and June, April, May and June, I don't know if I can do it. And I forgot that right after you click submit, there's a survey. So I was like, all right, I'm about to get my result. Let's do it. I click submit, and then they're just like asking me these survey questions. I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
That's why they put them there, because if you get whatever response,
Oh
nobody's
yeah,
filling out that
no
survey.
chance, no chance.
Oh, it's fun. How about you, Nick?
Well, having taken this exam multiple times and gone through this process when you go to hit submit, I've been kind of on every end of the spectrum. Like I knew, I wasn't gonna pass, one time. I was kind of iffy another time. And really this time I wasn't gonna say I was super confident. I knew that when I went to go hit submit, I did everything I could. And I would live with whatever result that was. And it could have been heartbreaking or it could have been, great. And it ended up going my way this time. But for anybody that's, watching that is either, going to retake it or, just starting this process, um, I think going into it, having the mindset of, you know, you'll be able to get over the hump eventually, and you know as long as you stay disciplined and keep your mindset of never getting too high or too low, I think it'll help you.
Man, that's fantastic. I feel like the next question was I was going to ask. You kind of already, gave a hint of the answer, but going back to you, Jack, first. You've taken the test, you've seen what it's like, and there's a lot of test takers out there who are listening or watching this podcast, and they're like, man, like what kind of like tips, pointers, advice can you like, give them our way because you've gone through this journey as a first timer, and then same thing for you, Nick. So the question is, what type of golden nuggets or best advice would you give out to these current test takers who are about to go into taking this exam now?
First, I would say commit yourself, like 100% commit yourself to it. Like I said earlier, it's an extremely difficult test. It is not impossible. Um, Second, I would say make sure you're getting plenty of sleep because that's super important with retaining information. For me, exercising was a good way that I reset my mind. Um, and if you're using Joe's class, one thing I would say is ask every single question that comes to your mind, no matter how stupid you think it might be. Because I remember I had to get over that for a minute, like, it's gonna, it kind of seems like a dumb question, but if you're using his program, you've got to use it to your full ability. You got to get the most out of it.
Nick?
I completely agree with Jack. I would say commit yourself. I also would say use Joe, because for me, he was the Joe and Ramen. You guys were the difference maker for me. And I think, for someone that I don't think I struggled with confidence, especially regarding this exam. And I think Joe's program helped me dramatically with confidence. And, I think Joe, had this quote where he's like, repetition and discipline and commitment build confidence. And it's so true. I think, a lot of people I talk to at work or just in the field, they're like, oh, I'm just not a good test taker. I have really bad test anxiety. And I'm like, hey, man, same. Um, but I think the structure of this course, really, committing yourself multiple days a week and this holds you accountable. And that's really the golden nugget I took away from this is that, you know, this process requires commitment. And I think this course just embodies that.
Okay. Oh, I appreciate you sharing that. Well, one more question for you guys. Now, since you've got the letters, you're proud of these letters, and we're proud of you guys as well. What are you looking forward to the most?
Well, actually, I still can't get my letters because I haven't met the experience section of it. I've still got a little bit of time, but when that day does come, um, I would probably say just utilizing all of the tools that it has given me, looking at a person and being able to break down their entire financial situation and actually be able to have an intelligent conversation about it and, have a seat at the table, especially since I'm, on the younger side.
I feel like Jack is probably the youngest one to ever take the exam.
Sam was actually, who was in the group right before him. I think they're like months apart.
Interesting.
And Sam beat me, so I'll never forgive him for that. Mhm.
What about you, Nick?
I would say, same as Jack, being able to utilize all the information that I learned these past few years. That all the coursework information is really applicable to what I do on a daily basis. And it's super important. People have really difficult decisions that need to be made. And, for me, having a seat at the table and being able to provide more knowledge and value was really my end goal with getting the CFP and having the letters. It gives you, another layer of credibility. when you're working with clients.
Yeah, 100%.
I remember feeling very similar to you guys, and like the letters were one thing, the conversations were the other
Mhm.
thing. You know, I even when I was studying for the exam, I was still producing. I was actually in the FAA program, Jack, when at Smith Barney, which is now the Morgan Stanley program. And I remember I one time diagrammed how a B trust worked for a client. They're relatively young. They were a couple that just got a massive buyout. They worked at a pharmaceutical company, a biotech, and they just got a boatload for their stock. And at that point, they were their late 30s, and they really didn't need to have they made so much money on the stock that they really didn't need to have another operating job again. And so at that point, the estate limit was $3 million, which between their stock, their life insurance, and their house, they were at $6 or $7 or $8 million, something to that extent. And I had to explain to them how we bypass it and get it to their children. And we were sitting in the conference room, and I remember just we had this little board that would open up, and I diagrammed for that. And they looked at me and they go, "You might be the smartest person we've ever met." And I was like, "Phew, I thought you were going to say something else." Like, and I remember that, like, that conversation making me feel better about CFP than, and even the letters themselves, like having their certificate was so cool. But I was like, man, I actually did something good for somebody today, and actually there was something real of value, and I look forward to that you guys get to have those
Mhm.
experience, because not only do we want a seat at the table, we want to contribute something. And you know, I've been talking to a lot of people in this industry, and you know, Ramen and I love this industry. We want people like you guys to do it. Like, we can't think of better people than who are in our course, who are working their tails off to go and get this, because you know, to have the most elite status and the most elite certification in our industry, it comes with a unique set of rules.
Mhm.
And you guys certainly met that. And to tell you guys how proud of I am, you know, not just because you guys went and got the letters, but because of how you guys changed throughout the process and challenged yourself. That's a rare thing. You know, I remember I had a coach who would tell me all the time, he's like, it's a rare thing when you get people who really want to invest and challenge themselves. And I will always respect that. And it was a pleasure to get, you know, to get to know you guys and to watch you work and to grow. And honestly, we couldn't be prouder of two guys who are more deserving of this and stewards of this profession. So, congratulations. I appreciate you guys being here. And I can't wait to see what you guys do. You know, I can't wait to see. So, just remember me and Ramen, you know, when you guys make it big. And Nick, I expect to be at least on one of your boat parties.
Mhm.
You know,
Absolutely.
uh,
You'll get an invite.
Yeah,
uh,
thank you guys so much for
Thank
everything.
you for everything, really.
all
We
right,
couldn't have
guys.
done it.
We're so happy that you guys could do this. Thank you again. And for everybody who is watching, take these nuggets, listen to these things, mindset and otherwise, that these pastors have, they've been through what you've been through. And we thank you guys again for sharing. Please make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you guys on our next episode.